All right, we're back.
We are.
Footnotes.
Yes.
Thomas, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing so good. Yes. How about you?
I cannot complain.
I love
Jesus is very good.
He is good. He is good.
So we're back with episode 3.
Episode 3
of Footnotes. Today we're going to be looking at the final several questions that I had for you regarding the topic of worship.
Yep.
And so we'll look at those one by one and whatnot. But the first one first of all, let's sort of like touch on a little bit where we've been.
Yeah.
And so like highlights in your mind, like how would you want to like sum up what worship is, like how we play into that as Christians, and what's required of us within that role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think highlights from where we've been would be worship is adoration and awe that is expressed by humility on our part, right? So we express adoration and awe by humbly bowing. And that's all built into the word of worship. And so I think that is a pretty significant and maybe different idea than what we typically think of worship in our society. And so that's important, I think. And then just noting the difference between worship and praise and prayer, where worship is that giving of adoration, praise would be that giving of thanks, and prayer would be more in line with that asking piece. And so, so I think that those are kind of the things that like the bird's eye view of what we've talked about up to this point. And so, that's I think it's really important for us, just as we're thinking about worship, to really focus in on that. Worship is adoration and awe directed to God, and that is expressed in our humble bowing before Him.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. So this morning I wanted to sort of focus in a little bit more on the idea of like, what does worship look like in churches and like in our personal life?
Yeah.
Like, what bearing does the culture have on worship? And what is the plan to incorporate worship at Harvest? So I guess it's a two-part question, right?
Totally.
But like, can you break those down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a culture like our culture looks at worship in weird ways. So our culture looks at worship probably more like praise, like our church culture, and I'm using that very loosely, not Harvest culture, but like the culture of churches around America would, if you said, hey, what is worship? They would talk about a music set. They would talk about a style of music maybe, and that's just not. I mean, that's not what worship is. It has music can certainly be a help. It can play in, and you can worship while singing, absolutely. But the primary idea of worship has to do with a heart fixed and focused on God and who He is, that awe sense, and then again, that's built into the idea that we would humble ourselves before Him. That is not usually the way the music, and especially worship music, that is typically talked about in churches around. Not usually how that works. And so it could, but I don't think that's how it usually works. So church culture, I think, doesn't always view worship like the Bible views worship. But our culture, American culture in 2026, like, what is worship? I don't know. Like, I don't know that our culture would have any real idea. Like they might be like, oh, well, worship is something like that's what church people do.
Sure.
Or like, oh, that must be going to church. Like maybe, well, it's that one church service that, like, on the sign it says worship service 11 o'clock. So maybe whatever they do at that service. But I think it's when I say it's misunderstood, I might mean more. It's just not known in our culture.
So, like, it does seem though that the American church has missed the mark in part with this.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely a piece, an aspect of worship that is missing within the American church, and we are not outside of that, like that conversation as well, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, do you think, in your opinion, that like acknowledging that there is a spiritual battle going on all the time, do you think that's an intentional strategy from the evil one to like mislead or sort of like say that like bowing down portion is not worship or is not needed?
Yeah.
Because you think about it, like in Dave Hardy's book Worship,
Yep.
the Year of God, I've gotten to a certain point where it was talking about like if you had a person that observed two different churches.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so like and they saw like a Christian church that has their services, and then they have another type of church,
Sure.
say a Middle Eastern church of whatever.
Yeah.
You would obviously say that one is very much more worshipful in the definitions that we've kind of already laid out.
Right.
And so, like, do you think that's an intentional strategy of the evil one?
I think, I think it certainly could be. Yeah. I think if jumping ahead a little bit to like one of the questions we will look at, the idols of our modern culture, right? And I just love the way that you like worded the question, even like their technology, their politics, it's comfort, success. Of course, we could add in money and pleasure and all of the things, right?
Sure.
It's all the same things that have been worshipped throughout history with just a more modern bent today. Right? And it's sure hard to bow before the Holy One, the one who is above all and over all and in all, when we're passionately pursuing money. Right? If we are wholeheartedly driving our life for popularity, for the likes on Facebook or whatever, then it's pretty hard to bow down in front of the God who is. And so I think that's, I think that the battle here is, I mean, that's always playing out behind the scenes. It's in the battleground is our heart. And who are you? You're going to bow to something.
Sure.
Right? You're going to give place. You're going to give awe. You're going to live your life for something or someone,
Whether you intend it or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so if the enemy can distract us with all of the other stuff, and we can get passionate about our favorite political candidate or what the president did or did not do this week or whatever, and we're out on Facebook bashing everybody that disagrees with us. Well, we're certainly we're not going to go and cuss out somebody on Facebook,
Sure, yeah,
and then turn around and be like, "But God, you are so good." I mean, we might do that,
yeah,
but there's clearly a disconnect,
Yeah.
but in our heart there, and we've given place, we've humbled ourselves to something, and we have not humbled ourselves to God.
Other things have taken first place,
Exactly.
and first seat as opposed to Jesus, which
That's right.
isn't there in that same seat.
No, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so the first question I have for you that we're going to look at is like, what is the difference between corporate worship and personal individual worship? Because like people show up to church and they do a thing, like they sing praises to the Lord. Sometimes they'll pray and they'll be taught the word, but like what is the difference between corporate worship and like how that plays out in individual worship?
Sure. Yeah. So when we use the word corporate, we of course aren't talking about like the corporate world, like Sears or Reebok or whatever, right? Where we mean corporate like a body or a collection. We mean the church is what we mean. And so there is certainly a place for worship to happen with the body of believers. But like any other area of our life, prayer or worship or witness or even sanctification, right? we can get too focused on the outside and what people see around us, and so we put up the facade or the outward facing, like, oh look, so I'm coming to church, and yes, I'll pray for the offering, and yes, I'll do this, and yes, I'm obviously a very spiritual person. Look at my tie,
Sure,
and
yeah,
whatever, right? But then we live a life that is totally opposed to that, and it's what Jesus condemns in the Sermon on the Mount, right? Like, why would you pray on the street corner when you've never prayed in your closet, right?
Yeah.
Like that. And so in that same way, I think both are necessary. That's what I'm trying to get to, right? A worship with a body of believers is so good, and I think it's right and appropriate that we would corporately together as a body of believers acknowledge that God is above all and over all and in all, and that we're standing in awe of Him, and then we are going to, as a church family, as a gathered group of believers, we are going to acknowledge, no, you get it all, and so we'll humble ourselves together in worship. But that probably ought to be undergirded by a regular time of us doing that in private. Right? In the same way, when somebody stands up and leads in prayer in a church service, maybe they're opening it up, or maybe we're praying over people or whatever, and somebody comes up and begins to pray, we would expect that as they lead in prayer in a corporate way, that's backed by a life of prayer.
Sure.
That isn't the first time they've talked to Jesus today, sure. And certainly not the first time they've talked to him this week.
Both are absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing one but not the other. It should say where you're at in your relationship.
I think so, yeah.
You think about like. I think it's the same conversation as far as when people say, well, I don't go to church, but I worship,
sure,
privately. It's just like, well, okay, yeah.
You should.
There's other aspects that aren't really being addressed there.
Yeah, that's right.
But, and vice versa.
Yeah,
if you're going to church, but you don't have any kind of relationship or like any kind of like life patterns outside of church that are in line with the Bible, then like that's also an issue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I will say, before we move on, I will just say that the other thing that probably is worth talking about when the idea of the corporate and private worship is the audience is the exact same. Right?
Okay.
So sometimes what could happen is we get to a church service and we're going to pray, or we're going to sing, or we're going to worship, and in our mind the audience changes to the people that are in the room, but that's not the audience ever. I mean, like there's certain songs maybe that the audience the lyrics of the song are addressed to other people, right? But even in those situations, this is a testimony of our God and what He's done to us and for us, right? And so, in the same way, if I'm worshiping, if I'm worshiping in my closet, right, and by myself, where it's just me, then that's me and God,
sure.
Right? And I'm worshiping Him. But if I'm worshiping in a room full of people who have also dedicated themselves to worship and adore, the audience is still God. And that's, I think, really important, that we don't let the audience shift to a performance-based, I'm going to make sure Sister so-and-so really sees me get this done.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a second. That's kind of the opposite of humbling ourselves. Right? And so, anyway.
No, I appreciate that a lot. When you think about the like worshiping, you're worshiping a specific, like a point of action. And so it's like, you're not going to change the person or the thing that you're worshiping.
Right.
And depending on the setting that you're in,
that's it.
It's still the same. We're worshiping God,
that's right.
Regardless of where we find ourselves.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
I love that.
Yep.
All right. So, the next second question I have is what does it look like to worship God during trials? Like during suffering or times of like severe disappointment. The obvious like biblical example of this would probably be Job.
Sure.
Right? Like of all the things that he went through and like experienced. And like we see sort of like a third person perspective of that, but like now reading it, but like what does that look like? Because happiness is sometimes affected or affects our worship, affects our thing. So like talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, so when things are going great, right? When things are going good, we can sometimes struggle to keep our affection where they should be when things are going good.
Yeah.
And so when things are going poorly, we can also sometimes struggle to get our. We're just really good at struggling with getting our affections where they need to be.
fair.
Like it's mountaintop or valley. Like we're just really good at that.
Yeah.
But I think that I think when it comes to like the trial, suffering, disappointment, worship is adoration to the God that's above that. Right?
Okay.
And so it's adoration for the one who is powerful enough and cares about us enough to bring us through. And there does carry like just making the choice. No, I'm going through it. This is a battle. This is not pleasant. This is not fun. But I'm going to choose to worship anyway. You're not going to accidentally worship, right? You're not going to stumble into it. Like, oh, I fell and bowed here. Like, oops, but like that's not how this works.
Sure.
And so to make the choice, this is hard and this is tough and I don't like this, but God, you're still God. There's a certain weight to that kind of a mindset that is not like, well, I got everything I need. Everything's good. God, I guess you're God. Like, And I don't want to come across flippantly that people can absolutely worship in sincerity and in truth and things be going well.
Yeah.
Like we should.
Yeah.
But there is that like weight behind you're still good. You're still God. You're still who you said you would be, even when I'm going through hardship, even when it's bad for me at the moment. So I think that that's the, I think that there's something special about that, I guess. And that when we're coming to God in worship, it's not about necessarily, oh, God, make all my life better. We ought to be praying. We got to be asking him for strength and asking him for provision and asking him for help. He delights in that. He wants us to do that. But when it comes to worship, our focus isn't on us. It's on him. And he hasn't changed because I'm going through a hard time. He hasn't changed even if the trial is something that following him led me into.
Sure.
Thinking about those disciples on the Sea of Galilee, right? And they're in the middle of a storm. And they're there because they followed Jesus.
Yeah.
And but that didn't change who Jesus was.
Yeah.
He was still the one. He was the same one that broke the bread and fed 5,000. And he's able to calm a storm. Like that's who he is, regardless of the situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of the mindset that we should be taking into worship. Again, this probably is one of those situations and areas where prayer and worship kind of bleed into each other, and we are. If I'm going through it and I'm coming to God, acknowledging that He is God and that He is good and that He is right, like followed quickly behind that, I'm probably also asking him to fix where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then like if my mindset is right, that might be followed up quickly with but you're still God and good anyway, right? And so I think that like that might be one of those times where it's like there's some of that bleed over, and those are very prayer and worship end up they're distinct and separate, but they're happening together.
Yeah, I think like I love that. Like that's so important to like really kind of like consider. And because like in this conversation point of like defining them out to separately, prayer, worship, and praise, like worship is the only one that doesn't require us to bring anything.
Yeah,
you think about that,
yeah,
like you know, like we don't have to bring our happiness or our joy even, which is completely separate things. Like we're not required to bring really, like we just have to bring ourselves and regardless of the state that we find ourselves, broken or happy or joyful, or like we just come before God. And you could almost consider, and I think you sort of touched on this a second ago, is like worship prepares you to pray.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, you come before and you humble yourself, and it sort of prepares you for that conversation with the Father.
Sure. Yeah.
And I love that. That's so good.
Luke 11, we just were there At the time of this recording, it was Sunday, right? By the time it comes out, it'll be not Sunday. But with Luke 11, I mean, that's where Jesus starts, right? Lord, teach us to pray as John taught his disciples. Okay, here's how you pray. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And there's more to it than just worship there. But that's a part of that is acknowledging that God is above and God is over, and He is certainly our Father, but He is also glorified and sanctified.
Absolutely.
And so that's where Jesus starts before He brings the requests.
Yeah.
And so
That's so good.
Yep.
Okay, so the third question I have for you this morning is, how do idols of modern culture, like you think about like the things like that fit within like technology, politics, like the comfort, so you could probably put money or financial things in there, but generally success and however you want to define success, but like how do those things fit in or compete with our worship?
I think they're always trying to steal, like there's always an attempt to steal our attention. Worship by its nature, right? If it's adoration, if it's awe for the God who is, that it's expressed by humbly bowing before Him, then idols are pulling our attention away from giving Him adoration and awe. And that happens all the time. And that, I think that's the battle for the battle for our attention, the battle for our heart. It's what is most important to me. Is it's the zeros in my bank account, or is it the God who is? Is it my comfort and what I want to do on a Sunday morning, or is it the God who is? And that shows up all kinds of different ways. But in the idea of worship, it steals away so I mean, we're not going to bow before Him while we're passionately pursuing something else. That's so out of our nature to bow anyway. It's so out of our nature to humble ourselves that we're not going to. I mean, that's just, we're not going to bow before. We're not going to give the Father the adoration He deserves, the awe that He is owed, while I'm enamored with something else. My adoration is going somewhere else. And so I think that's obviously we tried to even talk about that with the culture and how this is present in that. But I think there's a ton of things that pull us away. There's a ton of different ideas that are constantly striving to get your attention. From the comfort that is puts me on the throne and I'm enamored with myself. Or I want this other thing or some other, I'm enamored with someone else. And so they get the throne of my life. I think that we're going to follow, we're going to love, we're going to passionately pursue something. And if it's not the Father, then we're not worshiping Him.
That's so good. Okay. So, fourth question, and this is going to be a two-part question, but so addressing the first part, what responsibilities do pastors and worship leaders have in teaching the church how to worship? Second part, or is it the responsibility of the church to prepare people to worship on Sunday? Like, is it the church's responsibility to teach people how to worship, or is it like, or should that fall into someplace else within our relationship with Christ?
I think it's the church's responsibility. So I think it's the responsibility of the leadership at Harvest Baptist Church to teach and preach the Bible. And worship is all over the Bible. So there ought to be some teaching and some preaching about and involving worship along the way. And because our audience is God and we see worship happen throughout the Bible, it makes good sense to me that as a church body that we are worshiping together, right? And so I think we see examples of that throughout Scripture as well. I don't think it's just something we're coming up with. I think we see examples of bodies of believers come together to worship God. And so with that, then, I think it's absolutely the responsibility of the teachers and preachers to teach and preach, and to change, to make sure that we are thinking about it well and right. But I also think there's some onus, there's some responsibility on a church congregation to come ready. In the same way that it's the church's responsibility. It's my job as a pastor to teach about prayer and to make sure that we have the right thoughts and the right mindset, that we understand about prayer well. But our congregation should come ready to pray.
Yeah.
We should come ready to sing.
So, hold on for 1 second. When you say come ready, like break that down though, because if what does that entail? Like, am I essentially like owning, taking ownership for my sins and talking to the Father, getting that right?
Sure.
Am I expand on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So, we talked about corporate worship, private worship, right? So, and in that, there's that same idea, private prayer, corporate prayer, right? There's the opportunity to praise God privately and corporately, right? And so when I say come ready, I mean that we're already doing that. We shouldn't be coming to church. We shouldn't be coming to church, and it takes us 3 songs to get in the mood to praise God, right? That's on us to be ready to praise Him when we show up. Yeah. Right. It's one thing, I suppose, you go to work and it takes you an hour and a half to get ready to work. like your boss might not appreciate that, but but we're talking about something that is honestly a bigger deal than our 9 to 5. Sure. Right. Like, we're talking about coming into we are gathering together to, it's for our benefit, right? But the audience of a church service isn't us. Yeah. The audience of a church service, the audience of our singing, the audience of our prayers, it's God. Yeah. And he certainly speaks to us, and obviously we're helped and we're encouraged and we're strengthened by it. But really, it's about worshiping Him. And so recognizing, okay, I'm going to church to worship, then I'm probably not going to shouldn't be engaging my flesh, my sinfulness. I probably need to be doing my best to be ready to worship, acknowledging that who He is, where I am, being right. Sure. As we come in. So it was popular for a long time, and for good reason. It was popular for a long time to think about like a song service as a preparation for preaching, right? So, okay, we come into church, we're going to sing some songs, and that's going to get us in the right mood to hear preaching. And singing does change our mind. It does change our emotion. And so for good reason, people would think that. But I think one of the things that is important to me and to Brother Samuel as he's leading singing and that kind of stuff, is that we recognize that the end of singing is praise to our God. The end isn't a change in your heart. Sure. Right? Yeah. So there'll be times, obviously, where I mess this up, where I come in distracted by the cares of this world, thinking about other things, struggling with my mindset. And as we gather together to praise God, my mindset shifts and focuses. And that's good. But how much better if I didn't take 2 songs to get there? Yeah. And so the last song was really good, but the first 2
were equally as good. You weren't ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. I was checked out.
I think that's so good. The comparison you gave a second ago of like, your civilian employer and going to work and it takes like 2 hours. And some people will be like, "Yep, I'm right there.
Yeah,
I get
totally.
that, you know." But your employer doesn't appreciate that. But you could say the same thing about God, though.
Sure,
You know,
yeah,
when we show
yeah.
up to church, you know, like I think about in my job, and I think most people would probably be able to relate to these ideas where like, you know, like I have to do certain things before I even get to work.
Yeah,
You know, like I shave, you know,
Sure,
like
yeah.
I wear certain clothes. I can't show up to work in pajamas.
Right. Yes.
Like
show up ready.
I have to show up ready to work.
Yeah.
But also like it's not just a physical appearance,
Right, of course.
of things where like I go to work and I do a job. Like I'm also have to be mentally checked in so that when I actually start work that you know, I can start like being like relative within that job, or I can start being productive for my boss.
Yeah.
I can start accomplishing things, right?
Right.
And so like I think that's so good. Like if we were to apply that same logic to church and worshiping God, like you might eventually get there. But like his perspective of that though is like, okay, well, why couldn't you have just been here ready? Like why couldn't you have just took the time, you know, before you came in and just made sure that you were ready to be here and do all the things that you're supposed to.
Yeah. I'm glad that we serve a gracious God too.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because there've been plenty of times, right? I mean, like the conversation on the ride in ends up with disagreements in the car, you know what I mean? Kids didn't cooperate, whatever, right? All the stuff that happens, you know, and we come in distracted. And I think that it's just that shouldn't be the norm. I think that it's fine if it happens, right? I mean, great, jump in, plug in, awesome, right? Great. Just like your boss would be that way, right? I mean, most of the time, it's not like, but we ought to make it the habit. The habit of our life ought to be to show up ready. Yeah. And so, it's on church leadership to lead that way, but it's on a church congregation to show up
and be there. Yeah, mentally.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. Okay, so sort of to wrap this this conversation up, wrap this topic up of worship. The last question I have is, like, how can churches cultivate a multi-generational worship culture? You know, like this idea or this question really, like, it's not really even a new idea if you think about it.
Of course.
Like, I remember going to church as a kid, and like the church decided to try to save money in a sense, and so they used a projector, and so like the whole like clear screens, and they would project it up on the wall, and so like some of the older people in the church were like, oh, we're not using hymnals. This is you know, sacrilegious. But like, you know, like how do we bridge that gap within the church? Talk about that.
I think that so first of all, I'm certainly no expert, right? Certainly no expert. We're working on it. It's how it is. But I think the way that we change a culture and want a culture to extend like across the generations is we do that the same way we would do that for anything else, right? So the way you change a culture is by talking about the need for that, by addressing it, by dealing with it, and then by doing it, and then when it gets comfortable, addressing it again, and doing it some more. And so I think that at Harvest we have created a culture. And I say we created, but I think Harvest has grown into this culture where singing is what we do. When we come to church, we sing. And so by and large, from the oldest to the youngest, you get into our congregational singing time, and most times people have a hymn book open and they're singing. Like, and people that don't have a hymn book open, usually it's because they have it memorized and they're singing, right? Like, by and large. And so but we've done that by talking about it, and then by just doing it. And when we have kind of slacked off, we talk about it some more. And when it's like, this is what we do, and it kind of seems like we're just going through a flow, we readdress and we focus and we like, no, this is important. Mm-hmm. This is why we do this. And so we do the same thing for giving. Right? We want to create. We don't have to have this conversation with some of our oldest saints and some of those people that have been church members for 40 or 50 years. Like that, this is something that they grew up with. Mm-hmm. But we want to extend that this is a way that this is a way even in which we worship. We acknowledge that God is above my finances, and so I'm going to honor Him and humble myself before Him in that way. And so there's a bit of that even in giving. And so, but the way we do that is we talk about it.
Yeah,
we don't want to beat the horse like a dead horse about it, but it's in the Bible. We talk through it when it comes up in our teaching and preaching. We don't let the offering pass and just go, well, this is what we normally do at this time. So but we focus in. There's usually a word or two that gets said. The prayer beforehand is usually on purpose, right? And then we do it. Yeah. And I hope that extends to parents talking to their kids and things like that. But as a church body, we talk about it, we practice it, and then we refocus on it when things are getting out of whack or where we're becoming too comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's the best way, but that's what we're doing. So I don't know.
I mean, it's the proof is in the pudding, right?
Sure,
and so you could say that. I mean, like, is it the best way? Like, that's subjective, I think, in part.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it kind of working for us right now for Harvest? It seems to be.
Yeah.
So, like I don't necessarily know that there's a best way, but
right, sure.
It's a good way that we found anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really good. I've really enjoyed this conversation of worship. I feel like I've learned a lot. And just in the conversations, I would encourage everyone to pick up a copy of Dave Hardy's Worship, The Year of God.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different things, aspects. Yeah. That need to be considered, and that we probably didn't even touch on in this conversation.
No. Yeah, totally.
Like there's so much.
Yeah. Well, and he points out in chapter 1 or 2 that like tomes have been written. I mean, we're talking about like stacks of books have been written about the idea
libraries.
Of worship. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Libraries have been written, and he's condensed it to like 120 pages.
Yeah.
And in such a way that it was like easily accessible.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
I think he specifically said like, breaking it down for like a preschooler.
Yeah.
And like, I appreciate that. Like in my brain, I appreciate that.
He taught one of my classes there at Heartland and talked about keeping the cookies on the bottom shelf.
Okay.
If you want people to have good stuff, right?
Yeah.
You don't put the cookies on the refrigerator. Yeah. Keep them where the people can get them.
You want them to get
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's good.
So I appreciate that. And honestly does all of that without dumbing it down. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the mindset that people it's either a lofty idea or we've dumbed it down. I don't think he's done that.
Yeah.
I think that he deals with it in plain and simple language that makes it accessible for people like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate that. Yeah. No,
okay. So that's worship. This is our third and final episode on this topic.
Yep.
Where do you see this podcast going forward? Like we've talked about a couple ideas as far as like a pre-introduction to messages or sermon series. We've talked about post, after. Like, what are your thoughts now?
Yeah.
After doing this.
Yeah. One of the things I'm looking forward to is in the coming weeks, we will be shifting we're on Wednesday nights in Proverbs, and we're coming up to chapter number 9. I say coming up.
Okay.
But this week we'll finish chapter 6, and it's taken us 20 weeks to get through chapter 6. Okay. So we'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
but
that's fair.
Yeah. But we have 3 more chapters, and at chapter 10, Proverbs changes pretty significantly. There's a pretty big shift. And so I want to talk through some of that ahead of time maybe, but also would love to take questions from our church congregation and about the first 9 chapters of Proverbs, because I'm confident that in the course of preaching and teaching, in an effort to make things clear and plain, I have actually clouded and obscured. And so
this happens.
Yes, it does. And so, but I don't always track to that. and so I'm the one talking. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right? So if it doesn't make sense to me, it's a problem.
Yeah,
I'm done
absolutely.
real poorly. And so yeah, I'd love to take questions there. And so likely what will end up happening, we'll have we'll create a way for questions to get submitted. And then with that, then we will address, depending on how many questions we get, we'll address those.
That's awesome.
Some of them, I'd love to do that. And so I expect that's something that I look forward to seeing. And then I think we're still kind of in the process of just figuring out exactly what this is going to look like forever.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
I think it's also something we should like, and maybe continue to brainstorm and think about, like different topics. Like we looked at worship, but there was like so many different topics and things that we could look at as well. Like if there's not necessarily a lot of feedback that we're getting from the church body as far as things that they have questions about, maybe we look at something else. Okay, so that sounds really good. And so this will be releasing probably the third week of January.
Okay,
I
makes
think
sense.
because the first episode will be released, already released on Saturday. And so I've already seen a couple of people have viewed that episode.
Yeah.
We apologize for the technical difficulty as
goodness.
far as the audio and video.
We have struggled with that.
We are still working those things out.
I think we got it. I think. We'll see. We'll see.
I feel like this one was good. We also thought the other two were good too. So, but But I encourage everybody to watch the videos, give feedback, comment in the comment section. Those we do read all of those.
Yeah, totally.
Miss Anna does all the editing and is able to see those comments, and so interact with this podcast. And like, share, and subscribe so you can get your friends in the Harvest Way as well.
Ooh, the Harvest Way. Hopefully that's Jesus's way. But.
We strive to be this way. So thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.